Swami Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagawatam ki jai. Creation of the universe ki jai. Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 6, Text 31, Creation of the Universal Form. Bahubhya Vartata Kshatram Bahubhya Vartata Kshatram Kshatriyas Tad Anuvrata Kshatriyas Tad Anuvrata Yo Jatas Chayate Varnam Yo Jatas Chayate Varnam Paurisha Kamaka Shatat Bahubhya Vartata Kshatram Kshatriyastad Anupata Yojatas Trayate Varnam Parisha Kantaka Shatat Bahubhya Vartata Kshatram Kshatriyastad Anupata Yojatas Trayate Varnam Paurisha Kantaka Shatat Chant.
Bahubhyo Vartata Kshatram Kshatriyastad Anuvrata Yojatas Trayate Varnam Paurusha Kantaka Shatat
Bahubhyo Vartata Kshatram Kshatriyastad Anuvrata Yojatas Trayate Varnam Parusha Kantaka Shatat
Bahubhyo Vartata Kshatram Kshatriyastad Anuvrata Yojatas Trayate Varnam Paurusha Kantaka Shatat
Bahubhya from the arms Avartata generated Kshatram the power of protection Shatyaha in relation to the power of protection Tat that Anuvrataha followers Yaha one who Jataha so becomes Chayate delivers Varnan the other occupation Parisha representative of the personality of Godhead Kantaka of disturbing elements like thieves and debauchees Shatat from the mischief. Translation. Thereafter, the power of protection was generated from the arms of the gigantic Virat form, and in relation to such power, the Kshatriyas also came into existence by following the Kshatriya principle of protecting society from disturbance of thieves and miscreants. purport. As the Brahmanas are recognized by their particular qualification of inclination towards the transcendental knowledge of Vedic wisdom, so also the Kshatriyas are recognized by the power to protect society from disturbing elements of thieves and miscreants. The word anuvrataha is significant. A person who follows the Kshatriya principles by protecting society from thieves and miscreants is called a Kshatriya, not the one who is simply born a Kshatriya. The conception of the caste system is always based on quality and not on the qualification of birth. Birth is an extraneous consideration. It is not the main feature of the orders and divisions. In Bhagavad Gita 18:41 to 44, the qualifications of the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras are specifically mentioned, and it is understood that all such qualifications are needed before one can be designated as belonging to a particular group. Lord Vishnu is always mentioned as the Purusha in all Vedic scriptures. Sometimes living entities are also mentioned as Purushas, although they are essentially Purusha Shakti, Parashakti, or Paraprakriti, the superior energy of the Purusha. Illusion by the external potency of the Purusha, the Lord. The living entities falsely think of themselves as the Purusha, although they actually have no qualifications. The Lord has the power to protect. Of the three deities, Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara, the first has the power to create, second has the power to protect, and the third has the power to destroy. The word Purusha is significant in this verse because the Kshatriya is expected to represent the Purusha Lord in giving protection to the prajas, are all those who are born in the land and water. Protection is therefore meant for both man and animals. In modern society, prajas are not protected from the hands of thieves and miscreants. The modern democratic state, which has no Kshatriyas, is a government of Vaishyas and Shudras, and not of Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, as formerly. Maharaj Yudhisthira and his grandson Maharaj Parikshit were typical Kshatriya kings, for they gave protection to all men and animals. When the personification of Kali attempted to kill a cow, Maharaj Parikshit at once prepared himself to kill the miscreant, and the personification of Kali was banished from his kingdom. That is a sign of Purusha, a representative of Lord Vishnu. According to Vedic civilization, a qualified Kshatriya monarch is given the respect of the Lord because he represents the Lord by giving protection to the prajas. Modern elected presidents cannot even give protection from theft cases, and therefore one has to take protection from an insurance company. The problems of modern human society are due to the lack of qualified Brahmanas and Kshatriyas and the over-influence of Vaishyas and Shudras by so-called general franchise. Om Jnana Tivaranasya Ganja Shalakaya Chakshamitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So there is a verse which says, Janmanam Jayati Shudra. Everyone is born Shudra. Sanskarat Bhaved Dvija. By sanskaras you become Dvija. Vedapatat Bhaved Vipro. Studying the Vedas you become a Vipra. And Brahmajanatiti, Brahmana. You become a Brahmana by knowing Brahman. And so everyone is born Shudra, especially in this Kali Yuga. But by undergoing the purificatory ceremonies, you can become a Dvija, twice born. So Dvija, bird is also called Dvija. Why is a bird called Dvija? Because there's two births. The egg comes out, that's the first birth. And the second birth is when you break out of the eggshell. So our first birth is from our mother and father. And the second birth is when we break out of the shell of ignorance. And then we become Dvija, or twice born. And so, yes, Prabhupada has explained that. And so we are like the birds, we are Dvija, because we have taken two births here. And by studying the Vedas, you become Vipra, you become a Brahmana. And if you know Brahman, you become a truly learned Brahmana. So the three higher castes, the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, they all got initiation, sacred thread, they became Dvita. And it was not simply by birth, as Prabhupada says in the purport, it's by your qualification. So in terms of the four orders, we heard yesterday, no caste is to be considered degraded because of being situated on a particular part of the body. In our bodies, we don't show an actual difference in our treatment towards the hands or legs. If we get something on the hand or leg, if we get an injury, and just like our Vaishnava got an injury, it doesn't mean that we don't take care of it. We do take care of it, even though it's just the hand, the arm. Each and every part is important. Although the mouth, of course, is the most important, as we heard yesterday. So just like I was saying last week that this whole creation is based on compassion, the Lord's compassion. So the whole Varnashram system is based on love. And it's a culture of respect. And Bhagavatam confirms that in the first canto, second chapter, verse 13. What's that?
Now, you're saying that to Esther.
Okay.
They need milking.
Tapum vidijasesa pranashama vibhavisha svanstitasya dharmasya sansiddhir haritoshana. The purpose is to please Hari. And if you please Hari, then everyone is pleased. So we have the example of, in this class, I'm going to use the example of Prithu Maharaj, that he was a proper Kshatriya. And he loved his citizens and they loved him. It was based on love. And it was like that when we joined. And with Srila Prabhupada, it was based on love. We were all together, Grihastas, Vanaprasthas, Brahmachari, Sannyasis, living in one house together. And it was interesting. But we did it because we loved Prabhupada. We did it out of love. It was based on love. And so Varnashram is also like that. There's four principles also: Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. Dharma means religion, Artha is economic development, Kama, sense gratification, Moksha is liberation. So for the Vaishyas, the Grihastas, Artha is most important. They need money. Grihastas need money, the Vaishyas need money. But what this means is not you just take money, you have to maintain the other three ashrams by giving in charity. But all four ashrams have to give in charity, and that's confirmed in Gita, 18th chapter, verse 5. Yagya dana tapa karma natyajam karma evata yagya dana tapas chaiva pavanani manishinam. That acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance are not to be given up. They must be performed. So even if you are a sannyasi, even if you are you must do sacrifice, charity, and penance, because it's for purification of heart. So what do the Brahmanas give us? They give us knowledge, and they should be satisfied with the simple living and high thinking. And before they were, Prabhupada tells many stories about such Brahmanas, that there was one Brahmana 150 years ago, 200 years ago. He was very poor. The king said, "Let me help you, I will give you something." He said, no, my students bring me some tamarind leaves and rice, and I'm satisfied with that. He didn't need any more. So the Kshatriyas, they give land to the Vaishyas. The Vaishyas give wealth and products, and Shudras give their labor. So all of them are engaged in giving something. It's a giving relation, give and take, Varnashram Dharma. But now Prabhupada talks about what we have nowadays is Ugra karma. And he says this Ugra karma causes agitation in human mind. And in one purport he said factory is another name for hell. And one of our devotees, Bajrahari in England, used to work in a factory. And he told Prabhupada that, I almost had a nervous breakdown working in that factory. And Prabhupada said, yes, that's because in your last life you were all Brahmanas, and now we are here together again. Interesting comment by Srila Prabhupada. And so let's talk about Kshatriyas again. Prithu Maharaj, there's a wonderful verse here which shows his mentality as a king. He's actually begging his citizens for their help. He says, my dear citizens, for the welfare of your king after his death, You should execute your duties properly in terms of your positions of Varna and Ashram. Always think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in your hearts. By doing so, you'll protect your own interests and you'll bestow mercy upon your king for his welfare after death. So who cares about the king nowadays? We don't care what happens to him, but he was asking them, if you love me, then please follow Varnashram and think of the Lord in the heart. Not just follow Varnashram, think of the Lord in the heart too. Without Krishna consciousness, then it's not Daiva Varnashram, it's Asuric Varnashram. And so, yes, the Varnas and ashrams, they were interdependent. The citizens depended for protection and instruction, depended on the king, and Priyuta was depending on the citizens for following Varnashram for his perfection. Both of them were interdependent. It's not like they were existing separately. And so the difference, as I said, between Daiva and Asuric is the Daiva Varnashram is a connection to Krishna. And so the arms, the Kshatriyas, the arms, they depend on the eyes and the brain. So the Kshatriyas depend on the Brahmanas for vision. The Brahmanas give vision. If somebody attacks us and we're blind, how can we protect ourselves? And how will the legs see where to go without the eyes? And so we heard in this verse, the duty of the king is to protect the citizens from danger and also to give employment in Varnashram. Now, a problem in the United States, unemployment, so many people on food stamps, especially with COVID, people have lost their businesses. They have lost their jobs and their businesses. So therefore, the king has to protect. He's responsible. If you don't have a job, that's the responsibility of the king. And so, what is Asuric Varnashram? We heard here about it in this purport. If Kshatriya just takes taxes and neglects the rest of the body, he and others will suffer. And so, the Kshatriya has to protect the heart, and he was requesting the citizens to keep Krishna in the heart. And so the Kshatriya not only protects you from material, physical danger, he protects you spiritually. Also, he's meant to protect you spiritually. And again, another example is Yudhisthira. So all the citizens were cooperating with Yudhisthira in the kingdom because he was a Krishna conscious king. Not only the citizens, in the first canto, 10th chapter, verse 5, we hear the rivers, the oceans, the hills, the mountains, the forests, the creepers, and active drugs in every season paid their tax quota to the king in profusion. Not only the citizens were paying taxes, the rivers, the oceans, the hills, the mountains, the forests, the creepers, he was getting fruit and flowers and everything. The herbs and jewels from the ocean, jewels from the hills. And so because Sri Prabhupada says in the purport, again this purport of this verse is talking about the Purusha and how the king represents the Purusha, Ajita. So Yudhisthira was under the protection of Ajita, Krishna. And that's why the Prabhupada says the properties of the Lord, the rivers, oceans, hills, forests, are all pleased. How to please the rivers, oceans, hills, and forests. I mean, now people are more thinking about eco. But there it was all taken care of when you have a Krishna conscious king. And there we give taxes to the king also. And so Prabhupada said the secret to success is to take refuge under protection of the Supreme Lord. So now we're talking about the universal form. And Prabhupada explains everything in creation has a service to perform in the universal form. Every herb, every seed, every blade of grass has a service, a purpose. And when there's a Krishna conscious king, then that purpose is fulfilled. He knows how to use everything in its proper perspective. In a lecture, Prabhupada said that all vegetables that we see, every creeper has some service we do not know. So they all have a service in the universal form. They're part of the universal form. And if we want to control nature, then we have to be Krishna conscious. So all the Varnas, they all had service to Krishna. All the Varnas would appreciate each other. It was a culture of respect. So in one lecture again, Prabhupada was talking about the 4 different Varnas, how they used to greet each other in the old days. How to greet a Brahmana, Panditji, Pandit Maharaj, I keep getting these ads on my Indian phone number. Panditji will help you. Some Panditji wants to help me, but that's okay. With those kind of Panditjis, we don't need. And then Kshatriya is just interesting. Prabhupada says Thakurji, Thakur, Sahib, Thakurji. Maharaj, we generally hear Maharaj, and Maharaj is for sannyasis, Maharaj is for Kshatriyas. And the Vaishyas, the merchants, are addressed as Sethji, and the laborers as Chaudhary, and Chaudhary means leader. So the Shudras, they're addressed as leaders. So what a culture is Varnasha. What a culture was there. It's completely opposite of the Asuric Varnasha. And so we have examples here of how, from the scriptures, how they used to greet each other. When Maharaj Dasarath was receiving Vishwamitra, he said, Ahishtam yata punarjana jayaya. How are you doing in your path, in your endeavor to conquer the repetition of birth and death? So he's a Brahmana. How are you doing in your path of liberation? Maharaj Dasarath to Vishwamitra. So Prabhupada explained again in a room conversation that a Brahmana does not go to construct a big house. He simply constructs his character. So if you're a Brahmana, you've got to construct a character. And the Kshatriyas and the Vaishyas, they say, okay, come here, sit down. I'll give you a place. So one is enabled to become a Brahmana, let him become Kshatriya. If he can't become a Kshatriya, let him be Vaishya, otherwise let him remain Shudra. He said, but we're trying to create an ideal society of Brahmanas. And in Los Angeles, the neighbors were complaining about the devotees. They don't work. Look, they don't, and they're just sitting there and they're taking advantage. They probably said, well, why don't they come and join us? They don't have to work either. Let them come and eat and be one of us, and no problem. Yeah, and he says, yes. He said, we don't work because our father is very rich. Rich man's son doesn't have to work. So, yeah, I remember when I joined before my husband, like 2 months before, and we were hippies, and his philosophy was, I won't work. But when I was working a little, so we had some money. So after 2 months of having no money, and he couldn't follow his philosophy, he had to join the devotees. His devotees didn't work. And yeah, anyway, yeah, so that worked out. But yes, yeah, we have Brahmanas, but they do work. Well, we hear about that a little bit later. So the Kshatriyas, how to greet a Kshatriya in Bhagavatam, 6th canto, 14th chapter, 17. The great sage Angira was greeting Chitraketu. He said, I hope your body and mind and your royal associates and paraphernalia are well. The body, the mind, and the associates. A king is always protected by 7 elements: his instructor, guru, his ministers, his kingdom, his fort, his treasury, his royal order, and his friends. So how's your defense? How's your treasury? So Vaishyas, we have the example of Vasudeva when Nanda was visiting Thura to pay his taxes. Vasudeva said to Nanda, please tell me about the welfare of Vrindavan. You have many animals. Are they happy? Are they getting sufficient grass and water? Please also let me know whether the place you are now living is undisturbed and peaceful. So he was asking about the cows. He was asking about if it was peaceful there. And so for the Shudras, I guess, how are you? Yeah, because our self is the most important if we're happy. So Prabhupada, he had one devotee, Pradyumna, who I did know very well. Pradyumna was his Sanskrit scholar. So Shrutakirti tells a story. He said, when I was first with Srila Prabhupada, he sometimes rang his bell. And when I entered the room, he would ask, where is Panditji? So he used to call him Panditji. After several months, the Sanskrit editor was not always readily available. Srila Prabhupada would then call me to his room and say, where is Banditji? Prabhupada. But yes, yeah, we greet devotees in different ways. one disciple of Jagannatha Maharaj was telling me, he was greeting her that, how is your preaching going? That's what his most important thing was, Jagannatha's preaching. And so what happens if you get a Shudra on top of the government, then kama, sense gratification, is the goal. Just like in the 50s when I was a kid, I was remembering the president's promise. If you elect me, there will be 2 cars in every garage and a chicken in every pot. That was his promise if he would get elected.
I think that was Hoover.
Huh?
That was President Hoover in the 1930s.
Hoover? Yeah, well, I heard also, I think somebody copied it because that's what I heard too. Nixon, I think it was Nixon. I don't remember who it was. Somebody was saying that. It was in the 60s. And yeah, I remember that. I remember who it was though.
Probably
Plagiarism is a sincere form of flattery.
Yeah, I remember that. It struck me as a kid. 2 cars in every garage. Okay, so if it's a Vaishya in control, then artha, or money, will be the main thing. And if you get a Kshatriya, a real Kshatriya, then dharma, or righteousness, religiosity, that will be the main thing before the Kshatriya. If you get a Brahmana in charge, then spirituality, liberation. But all are needed. We need the arms for protection, we need the eyes for our guidance, we need the legs for transport, the stomach for giving energy. So, just like Prithu was depending on his citizens for his future life, Prabhupada said, I'm depending on my disciples. He said this, and this was, I think, in reference to Dhruva taking his mother back to Godhead. He said, the Krishna conscious movement is spreading now all over the world. Sometimes I think, even though I'm crippled in many ways, if one of my disciples becomes as strong as Dhruva Maharaj, he will be able to carry me with him to Vaikuntha Loka. So that was Prabhupada, he was so humble. So it was a culture of respect, and the main thing, Prabhupada defined Daivavarnashram in the 7th canto, 14th chapter, verse 10. He said, Grihastha Vanapras Brahmachari and Sannyasi should endeavor together with their total energy to become Krishna conscious. That is Daivavarnashram. The goal is to become Krishna conscious. It's not some material thing. So Prabhupada said one of the objectives of the Krishna conscious movement is to establish this Daivavarnashram, not to encourage so-called Varnashram without scientifically organized endeavor by human society. So the Daivavarnashram purpose was to elevate everyone to the highest. Surik says, no, it's fixed, it's your birth. You take your next birth as a Brahmin, then okay. Like when we first went to India in 1972, the caste Brahmanas were saying, oh, you're doing such a nice puja. Next life, you can take birth as a Brahmana. And we told Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, go and tell them, you're doing such a nice puja. Next life, you can take birth in Iskcon. Anyway, yeah. So the problem is the Brahmanas kept the other classes down, and that's why people are not happy with them. When I was living in Goa, I had a moped, and the person who serviced my moped was a Brahmana. They were calling him Panditji. Can you service my moped, please? He was covered with grease from head to toe, and people were calling him Panditji. But anyway, that was my experience in India. So the result of materialistic asuric varnashram is injustice, exploitation, suffering. We see that today. And Prabhupada said, not Prabhupada, in Bhagavatam, it says, any king, this is 425-24, any king who does not teach his citizens about their respective duties in terms of varna and ashram, but who simply exacts tolls and taxes from them, is liable to suffer for the impious activities which have been performed by the citizens. So I guess you get 1/6, I've heard, of the impious activities. So the duty of the Kshatriya is to uphold dharma. So what is dharma? We hear that there are 4 pillars of dharma in the first canto: cleanliness, mercy, austerity, and truthfulness. But now if you read on later on in this canto, we're going to hear about those 4 pillars of religion again. we're going to hear different terms. Instead of cleanliness, mercy, austerity, truthfulness, we're going to hear vidya, dhanam, tapa, satya. We're going to hear knowledge and charity, austerity, and truthfulness. And the verse 3:12:41, Brahma created the 4 ashrams to uphold the 4 pillars of religion. So that verse says, education, charity, penance, and truth are the 4 legs of religion, correspond to brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyas. Brahmachari life is meant for education. Now in the other one, in the first canto, it says cleanliness. So brahmachari's cleanliness and education. Grihastha's daya and dana, mercy and charity. So the grihasthas, be merciful, give in charity. Vanaprasthas is the same, tapa. They uphold tapa, and sannyas is supposed to uphold satya, or truthfulness. So Prabhupada wanted this. And even, it's according to 4th chapter Bhagavad Gita, Guna Karma Vivadasha, according to your quality of work. So even in previous times, even in ancient times, this was followed. It's not something new. We hear about one Satyakama Jabala. He was a prostitute's son. He went to Gautam Muni and said, please make me your disciple. Gautam Muni said, who's your father? And he said, I don't know who's my father. He said, go ask your mother. So he asked his mother. She said, my dear son, I don't know who's your father. So then he came and he told Gautam Muni, sir, my mother doesn't know who is my father. So Gautam Muni said, yes, you are Brahman, because you're telling the truth. Nobody will say, I don't know who's my father. So we have examples like that in our movement. There is one, my godbrother, Haridas, who joined the Juhu Bombay. He was in the prison for stealing. And then he saw, back to Godhead in the prison, he saw a picture of Prabhupada. And he saw a very expensive watch. And he said, I must meet him and take his watch. I was thinking. So came to the Juhu temple. I need to see your guru. And they said, well, he's not here. He's in South India. Okay, I'll go. Where is he? He went to South India. He found Srila Prabhupada. But when he saw Srila Prabhupada, he had a change of heart, like Juhu Maharaj. And Prabhupada took off his watch. You want this? Said, no, it's okay. So then, So then later on, in the 70s, it was a dream of lots of Indians to go to the USA. So he told this disciple, he called him Haridas. Actually, he didn't even he got a strange initiation. He didn't. No one would recommend him, but then Prabhupada, he just somehow came and sat down, and they were having an initiation, and then Prabhupada saw him. He said, oh, okay, so your name is Haridas. They called me Haridas. He said, yes, okay, Haridas. So then Prabhupada said, I want to send you to the West. And so, here's somebody from the streets, and he's gonna get all opulence. And then it was taking some time. He wasn't going, and Prabhupada said, what's wrong? Why are you not going? And he said, well, the problem is I can't get a passport because they want to know who's my father. And Prabhupada said, show me your passport. And then Prabhupada wrote under the father's name, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami.
Wow.
Father.
Wow.
Yeah, so we were singing Most Fallen, so I guess that's the category. You get the most mercy, you're the most. And so anyway, yeah. And this devotee became very opulent, extremely opulent. He has 2 apartments in Juhu. And he became a movie director. He even starred in a movie. So yeah, it works. It works. No matter what you want, even if you want material things, worship Krishna. So in Lord Chaitanya's time, it was a problem. The pundits complained, these people are chanting Hare Krishna, and they're low-class men, and the mantra is going to get contaminated. And so they complained to the Kazi. And so Lord Chaitanya, he preached about devotional service. This is in Antya Leela, by making Ramananda Roy a grihastha speaker. Born in a in a low family, Shudra. And he spoke the glories of the holy name through Haridas Thakur, Muslim. And so it's all started 500 years ago. And Prabhupada said now the same mercy is overflowing the entire world for this movement. So he said it's not different from the pastimes performed by Lord Chaitanya. Now there's one last purport I'd like to share with you from 5th canto, one verse actually, 1st chapter, verse 35, that a devotee who has taken shelter of the dust of the lotus feet of the Lord can transcend the influence of the 6 material whips, hunger, thirst, lamentation, delusion, old age, and death, and can conquer the mind and 5 senses. This is not very wonderful for a pure devotee of the Lord, because even a person beyond the jurisdiction of the 4 castes, that's us, an untouchable, is immediately relieved of bondage to material existence if he utters the holy name even once. And so Prabhupada says in the purport, sometimes caste brahmanas argue unless one changes his body, he cannot be accepted as a brahmana, because this present body is obtained as a result of past actions. In the past you acted as a brahmana, you take birth in a brahmana family. So without this body you can't be a brahmana. But Prabhupada says in this verse, he's freed if he utters the holy name even once. Freed means he changes his body. Then Prabhupada says, when we get initiated into chanting the holy name of the Lord, the body changes as we follow instructions of the spiritual master. Although we cannot see how the body's changing, we have to accept on the grounds of Shastra that the body's changing. And although we can't see the gross body changing, Prabhupada said that the holy name changes the subtle body. Because the subtle body changes, then we are free from material bondage. So, once in Los Angeles, Prabhupada said, if it were not for this chanting Mahamantra, you boys and girls could not do anything. In the West, you've used so many drugs, you can't accomplish anything. Chanting Hare Krishna has enabled you to get all these temples of devotees. It's simply Krishna's mercy and the chanting. And so everything is important. We all have a unique relationship with Krishna. We have a unique service for Krishna. And that's the challenge of our life, to see what we can do to please Krishna. As we heard, as Lord Chaitanya says, Kipa Vipa Kipa Yasi Shita Keni Noi, Jaya Krishna Tattva She Guru Hoy. If you may be a Brahmana, Shudra, Sannyasi, but if you know the signs of Krishna, you can become a spiritual master. Now I'll just leave you with one thought. One thing Prabhupada said in a lecture, in 1966, who was sitting there in front of him in 1966? And this was an early lecture, not at the end. Early in 1966, maybe he was in the Bowery. So who's in front of him? Some hippies, who knows, not even initiated yet. And so he says, Lord Chaitanya says the same thing, Krishna says the same thing. He's not stressing on birth. Nobody's responsible for his birth. He has to take responsibility for advancing in Krishna consciousness. It doesn't depend on any material condition. So as a chance given, you can become a Brahmana. Here's what's Prabhupada telling these hippies. You can become a great devotee of Lord Krishna. And you can become spiritual master of the world. So he's telling these hippies to become spiritual master of the world. 1966. Well, that's Prabhupada's mercy. That he's giving us, he's empowering us. He's saying you can do that. You can do it. You just have to take responsibility. It doesn't depend on your birth. Okay, we'll stop here. Any questions?
It must have been groovy times.
Yeah, I wasn't there that early. But I was there in 70. It was pretty good, yeah. It was really good. It was amazing.
Wow.
My temple president was Satsvarup Maharaj. My Harinam Sankirtan leader was Giriraj Maharaj. We were out 10 hours a day with Giriraj Prabhu, Brahmachari. And temple commander was Sridananda Maharaj. And the whole press was there, all the artists, all the kirtaniyas, and Jai Doita was there in charge of the press. And it was an amazing temple. Couldn't help but join. Yeah, you have a question?
Obviously, in that purport, Prabhupada talking about Line Ashram, the necessity for it. Obviously, we don't find that in modern day society, but it's something Prabhupada wanted. And does that exist within Iskcon? And if not, why doesn't it exist? And how do we implement that?
Does it exist within Iskcon? Yes and no. in some sense it exists, that we do have our ashrams. We have our ashram, brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha, so that's there. That we can see. But more difficult is to see the varnas. The varnas is, as far as I understand, when he was speaking to His Holiness Bhaktacharya Maharaj, it wasn't limited to Iskcon Varnashram. He was wanting to include the whole world in Krishna consciousness. And so Varnashram is helping people to come to the level of pure devotional service. If you're not ready to give up everything, if you're not ready to surrender your life, then okay, you do something. Just do something, whatever you can do. Whatever, if you're a carpenter, if you're an artist, do something for Krishna, do it for Krishna. If you can't surrender everything, that's okay. Just try. So yeah, I mean, we have to be the example. So he was mostly talking about the farms being the example for Varnashram, as far as we understand from studying his statements. But the farms, he was wanting them to be the example of Varnashram. So yeah, it's very hard to see that the Varnas in Iskcon right now. We can see the ashrams right now. So. And as far as I understood, it was meant for the whole world to expand Krishna consciousness. If the lizard talks, that's true. Any other? Maharaj, or something? Anybody else? Yes?
You said Yudhisthira took shelter of Ajita.
Yeah, Prabhupada says that in the purport.
Isn't that a name for Korma? Ajita?
Ajita means, no, it's not a name for karma, as far as I understand. Well, it could be. I mean, it's the churning of the ocean of milk. So there were 3 incarnations present during the churning of the ocean of milk. One was karma. One was the Lord. I thought it was the Lord who was helping the demigods churn. I thought that was Ajita. And there was one on top. See, there's
right.
4. There's 4 incarnations. One was on top, holding them under a hill. One was helping churn. One was underneath. And then Mohini Murti came. So which one was Ajita? I was thinking the one who was helping churn, or maybe the one on top.
Right. I think you're right about that.
Yeah. And the other one's called Karma.
And why would he have taken? Oh, that's just another name for Lord Vishnu that you were saying Yudhisthira is taking.
Prabhupada, in this, I just was quoting the purport, 110.5,
Oh.
where Prabhupada said that Yudhisthira was taking shelter of Ajita.
Oh.
Yeah. And it's a name for God. It's just a name for Krishna. It means unconquerable. It's just another name. It doesn't mean that he was taking shelter of the one who was there and churning the ocean of milk. But it's
mostly
name.
his name because his name is unconquerable.
But one thing is that Yudhisthira was taking shelter of Krishna. All the incarnations come in Krishna when Krishna comes. So Ajita was probably there too, with Krishna. So he can rightfully say, Prabhupada can rightfully say he took shelter of Ajita. Yeah, any other questions? Jack, Krishna.